Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Welcome to the Intergenerational Dialogue, Imagining a Future Free of Ageism, hosted by the Tzu International Youth Association, TIYA, and Buddhist Tzu Foundation, USA. So my name is Ashley Young, serving as the moderator of the dialogue today. And firstly, I would like to wish everyone happy International Youth Day and expressing our gratitude for you being here today with us, both on Zoom and on Facebook, to explore and exchange ideas on intergenerational issues. And as you can see here, we have a group of wonderful speakers today. We are grateful to have CEO Powen Yan from Buddhist Tzu Foundation, Buddhist Tzu Charity Foundation for the opening remarks. And we have four amazing panelists, which I will introduce later. And we have Lynette Brandil from Philippines to do concluding remarks. So I would like to give some brief introduction on the issue we are looking into today before we move into the dialogue. So ageism, according to the World Health Organization, WHO, is defined by how we think, how we feel, and how we act towards other people based on age. So for example, maybe in life, you have been told that, oh, you're too young to understand what I'm talking about. Or some elder population might heard, they are too old and their thinking is outdated. So some may seem inoffensive, but would drive many negative impacts that we may have neglected, including health and human rights and development issues. And most importantly, causing growing gaps between generations, which are reflected in our society from where we can see declining intergenerational collaboration, rising conflicts between generations, among others. And these issues are actually never new, but not sufficiently or boldly discussed. So the UN has identified intergenerational interventions and dialogues as one effective strategy to address the issues between generations. And today we are very grateful to have this dialogue as an opportunity for representatives from different generations to come together to voice their concerns and thoughts as a means to improve the understanding toward each generation, to rebuild a sense of connectedness, and ultimately to find a way for different generations to coexist in peace and solidarity. Most importantly, today's dialogue also serves as a powerful tool for us to kickstart TIYA's journey to improve cross-generation relationship and collaboration in our organization and communities, which we hope to see more youth volunteers and elder volunteers could come together to build a better world for all. So before we start the session, I would like to showcase some of the findings we have from our registration. So first, we can see we have quite a balance of youth and elder population signed up today. We can assume that many people are interested in understanding each generation better. And for the question about if the intergenerational gap is an issue in your private or public life, about 41% of the registrants said yes. And when we asked about the difficulty of working or communicating with people from other generations, most of the registrants felt moderate, and about 32% in total felt difficult or very difficult. And for the issues that each generation is concerned about the most, we can see that those that are below 45 years old, their first concern is climate emergency, similar to those that are above 45. Whereas the below 45 category are concerned about future job and employment and education, whilst for those above 45, their concerns mainly are conflicts and disasters and digital literacy. So through understanding the difference in concern issues of different generations, I believe this could help us to learn about each generation more. And thank you, Jai, who has helped to prepare the survey questionnaire. And I really think the basic findings lay a good foundation for us to kickstart the dialogue today. So with that, firstly, I would like to invite Powen Yan, the CEO of the Buddhist Tzu Charity Foundation, to give his opening remarks for the event today. CEO Yan is someone who I personally appreciate a lot for his effort in providing many opportunities and platforms for the young people to initiate and implement many youth-led activities. And he is also a great supporter for the intergenerational effort. So without further ado, let us welcome CEO Yan with his opening remarks.
各位国际青年日跨世代座谈会的分享者与参与者，大家好。联合国订定每年8月12日为国际青年日，今年以 Intergenerational Solidarity Creating a World for All Ages， 也就是世代团结作为主题，即期许跨世代平等合作，善用所有世代的潜力，达到真正 Leave No One Behind， 实现永续发展目标 SDG 10。根据2021年3月联合国发布的全球年龄歧视报告，青年人在就业、政治参与、健康与公益各个领域存在与年龄有关的障碍。我们希望增加跨世代的对谈与聆听，帮助青年投入社会创新，充分参与社会发展，包括消除贫困和不平等，才有机会达到社会祥和的未来。慈济国际青年会 TIYA 在国际青年日8月12日的周末，邀请跨国家、跨领域、跨世代以及慈济联合国青年代表，以年龄平等的未来作为主题，进行中英2场对谈，一起寻求世代理解与共同解决的方案。今天对谈的内容与意见，我们将会作为2022年10月22日第一届慈济国际青年大会的议程参考，深具意义。再次欢迎线上的分享者与参与者，也祝福对谈顺利圆满。各位国际
Thank you so much, CEO Yan, for the encouraging words. And now let me, sorry, I have some, okay. Now let me introduce our panel. Let me reshare my screen. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now. So we are going to move into our dialogue today, which I believe everyone has been really excited for. So please allow me to introduce our amazing panelists of the day. We have a great diversity of panelists coming from different backgrounds, different countries, and different generations. So first, we have Dr. Wei Sheng He, the Vice CEO of the Buddhist Tzu Chi Charity Foundation. He's also an Associate Professor of Tzu Chi University, Director of Humanity Communications of the Medical Mission of Tzu Chi Foundation. He obtained his doctorate degree from the Philosophy Department of Peking University, China, Master of Arts of Communication Management from the University of Southern California. And Dr. He is also experienced in disaster relief, where he acted as the on-site coordinator for the relief work of the Nepal earthquake, Indian Ocean earthquake, tsunami, Typhoon Haiyan, among others. Welcome, Dr. He. And next, we're going to have Ms. Hawa Taylor Camaro Dilo, also known as Auntie Hawa, the Chief of the Civil Society Unit at the Civil Society and Advocacy Section at the UN Department of Global Communication. So Ms. Hawa has extensive United Nations field and headquarters experience in public information outreach and fostering civil society partnerships, with a particular emphasis on youth and women's organization. Ms. Dilo began her UN career in 1987 in the Department of Public Information, which now known as the Department of Global Communications, and has served in 2 UN peacekeeping operations in Cambodia and Somalia, respectively from 1992 to 1994. And she has also worked for the UN Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat, at the UN headquarters in Nairobi, as an Associate Human Settlements Officer and a Partners and Youth Officer, where she managed strategic partnerships and designed and implemented empowerment programs for communities in informal urban settings. And Ms. Dilo is a citizen of Sierra Leone and United States of America. Welcome, Hawa. Next, we have Maisha Alves. She is very young. She's only 19 years old this year, and she has been a youth volunteer in City, Sri Lanka since she was 7 years old. And she has experience in food distributions, community care visits, medical conferences, and others. And personally, Maisha is passionate about children's rights and gender equality, which she believes that all children should have the right to access quality education, to be sheltered away from violence. And on the side of her work life, she is also a part-time film student. Welcome, Maisha. Last but not least, Timmy too. Timmy currently works at Samsung Electronics for the last 4 years as a senior key account manager, looking after TV and digital appliances. He is a certified Tsuji volunteer in New Zealand and has been volunteering for Tsuji for over 10 years. Started as a youth volunteer during university, he attended, planned, and hosted many conferences and events related to community development and well-being over the time, and has organized various disaster relief efforts in New Zealand, including for the floods and wildfires. And he currently serves as the team lead for public relations in New Zealand. So we are very excited to hear from all the speakers, and please say hi to our speakers in the chat. Feel free to leave some question in the chat if you have any. But we're going to start very quickly. And before we start, I just want to remind everyone that you are welcome to leave your question. We will collect and pass it to the panelists later in Q&A session. So now let us start the dialogue with the first question of the day to all the panelists. So as we know, the gaps between generations are increasing, reflected in the reducing youth representation in a particular organization or the lack of collaborations between generations. So generations are working in silo now somehow. And why do you think that happened? So first, we're going to invite Maisha to answer this question, and we will follow up by Timmy, Hawa, and Dr. Her. And just want to remind, please limit your intervention in 5 minutes. And now let us welcome Maisha.
Hello, everyone. So to answer today's question, I believe that there are many reasons as to why the intergenerational gap has increased. For example, it would first be the way different generations see things and the way they understand and act accordingly to these. For example, the former generations perceive climate change would be different from how the younger generations would. Of course, at the same time, they're both interested in it, but the way they tackle this issue is completely different. And another good example would be mental health. The way mental health was treated back in the day and how mental health is treated now is completely different, which could lead to people having misunderstandings and conflicts amongst each other. This could even often happen amongst your friends if you have larger age groups or even among your family members. While at the same time, each generation has their own different problems. I mean, of course, everyone has problems themselves, but the categories can vary, and that's how misunderstandings once again happen. Climate change is, of course, a huge issue that will impact our future, but the older generations do not highly prioritize the issue in the past, but the living conditions, jobs, and the health-wise of younger generation will be impacted due to this. And another point I would like to add would be the technological advancement and digitalization of the current era. That's how modern youth surround themselves with, whereas this leads to them isolating themselves from the older generations. For example, you have your own family, but you are more highly attached to your social life rather than your family life at the same time. And the last point I would like to add would be simply the lack of awareness on the intergenerational gap itself. You don't really realize that the gap keeps increasing throughout time. It just happens in such a pace at the back of your mind until you realize, oh, you've distanced yourself from peers that are older from you. You're only surrounded by the people your age, and you're only limited to the amount of knowledge and experience you gain due to this.
Thank you so much, Marsha. I think you have raised really important point when you talk about how different generations see things, and somehow it's also related to the living environment that we have since we are really young. Like for example, I think even if we are young, we have different resources to we gain different resources to grow up as well. Like if you want to compare me and you, I think we have totally different growing up conditions. So not to mention about the older generation, it's even different from us. So I think it's really important for us to learn how each generation see things, and to learn from other people's perspective, so we will have a better solution on how we can all coexist together. Thank you, Maisha, for that. Next, Timmy, what is your thought about this?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Yeah, really excited to be here today, and I believe everyone will have different views on intergenerational gap between from the differences of our age group. But we are definitely seeing a gap between the generations, and it is making it very hard for different generations of people to collaborate and work together. And the widening of this gap is a result of different ways people were brought up. Their siblings or lack of siblings, their friends and family they interact with, community, society, and other external global factors as well. And all of these can change the perspective of a person or community. And below are some of the reasons that really stand out to me when it comes to the widening gap. And the first one is the technological advancement that has happened over the last 10 to 20 years. When we think about the brand Apple or iPhones, we think it's been around for a very long time, but the first iPhone was only introduced in 2007, only 15 years ago, but it seems a lot longer than that. The way we receive information in this computer or digital age
Timmy, I think we lost you.
in the past, there would be limited choices. We got whatever was brought. We have the power of the internet. We can do any of the other numerous other apps. The other difference that I see is the single culture perspective compared to the multicultural influences of the present. We as people adapt to the environment that we are in. There is a global trend for youth to go on their OEs after graduating, to experience the world, the different cultures and people, and to have a global view on society. Also, these people are more likely to migrate to other countries for a better lifestyle. Many countries that previously had a single culture will now have multiple cultures all integrated into one. I remember when I was in primary school back in the 90s, sometimes my parents will make sushi.
Timmy,
I've
we
seen sushi
can.
before, which was, and I
Okay.
so different. But now it is widely available in New Zealand, and we have seen the integration of different cultures within the New Zealand community. As a result of the 2 points above, we're seeing a shift from physical interactions to virtual interactions. The world we live in has changed. With the older generation growing up in the 60s and 70s, they had limited technology. But now with people having more technology than ever, they are more interconnected and they can't leave their technology behind. So this isolation to technology has seen people interact virtually rather than physically a lot more than before. And this is causing the widening gap of the generations. From from these examples and sharing my own experiences, we are seeing that people are more attached to their phone and technologies. The improvements in technology has definitely made our lives easier. So I'm not saying stop using it, but we just need to find the right balance and be mindful that it is not taking over our lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Timmy. So I can see both of you and Maisha talk about technological advancement, which remind me of the result from the findings we showed earlier. So most of the elder population are actually concerned about digital inclusion. So they are worried about this. And from our Mandarin section earlier as well, one of the panelists shared about how her mother felt really warm and happy when the young people are actually willing to help out the elder generation, to adapt to new technological advancement that have released. So I think even though this might seem like pulling the gap between generations, but we can actually see this threat as a challenge as well for us to further improve the relationship if we are able to use it wisely. And thank you, Timmy, for sharing that. And now let us hear from Hawa. What is your thought on the reason of the widening gap between generations?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. Happy to be here. I think that I agree with all the varied thoughts and ideas that Timmy and Maisha have given. I think that resonates with me. But as they were talking, I was trying to think about myself. In my own personal life, and I'm originally from Sierra Leone. We tend to live in extended family situations. I live that way here in the United States. So one thing that I personally see, I have two sons, 17 and 24. My family, and then I live with my elder mom who's 87. And I see sometimes it's busy life, busy schedules, fast moving situations all around us, whether it's, my son's football schedule, my work schedule at the UN, or maybe my mom's schedule talking to her friends on the phone who are the same age cohort. And sometimes we're living these individual lives. Sometimes it's not because we want to, this is just the way that we're moving towards. So I think that it's necessary to make that special effort. I mean, I grew up in a time in Sierra Leone and here in the United States where there were a lot of family things. And I sometimes ask myself, have I failed with my kids? Although I grew up in the United States, I have a very strong African focus and belonging, because I was always at intergenerational weddings, parties, even sometimes it's somebody's death, where they're asking the kids, run to the kitchen, and I'm carrying literally a case of soda on my head or a pot of food with my brothers. But it gave us an opportunity where I got to know my cousins, I got to know my aunts, I got to know older people. Or in Sierra Leone, where we would go to visit, you are in the capital, but you go to the village. You have to meet your grandparents. And then there's a whole big family thing happening. You're hearing somebody giving the oral story of your family. I benefited from that here in the United States, that my mom would gather myself and my four brothers and give us tremendous history about Sierra Leone and how she grew up. And that kind of gave me a sense of belonging, attachment to that generation. And sometimes, even when I'm speaking in events, I recall something from my great grandmother's situation because I feel a closeness to that. So yeah, my schedule is busy and maybe there are these gaps, but I think it's been easier for me to connect and understand what life was, what my parent has gone through. And I struggle as a parent here in the US because I sometimes feel my kids' schedules are even busier than mine, and I have to make an appointment. But I mean, it's important to find that kind of spending time talking to each other. So as we say, we don't feel isolated. Both Tibi and Maisha mentioned technology. That's definitely, I give an example. My mom is now the Facebook queen, I call her. she didn't know how to use Facebook. I mean, everybody goes to work and sometimes she's alone. And my son and I tried to teach her Facebook. She doesn't know Instagram and all these other things, but she is so experienced in Facebook. Sometimes I come into the room, I'm like, can you go to bed? It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's not only young people who are on social media. So, I mean, I sometimes get the news from her, like what's going on. So I think for me, I always try to take things from like a personal and family perspective and align with what Timmy and Maisha has said. Thank you so much. Over to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Hawa. I think you have raised really important point as well. So when we are able to, maintain really good intergenerational relationship in our family, I believe we are able to, gain all the tips and useful ways to interact with the other older generation or younger generation in the society. So like, for example, like what you have shared earlier, it reminds me of how I love to interact with the elder generation in my organization, because I felt like, to me, they are my aunt, they are my uncle, they are my grandma, so that is the kind of the vibe that we have in the family, and that's how we reflect them in the society. So it's really important for us to learn about this in the family. Thank you, Hawa. And next, we're going to move to Dr. He on his perspective on this.
Okay, thank you. It's very interesting how the media change our generations, because I came from the media perspective. I am a broadcaster. So in the 19th century, people have a dinner together, and after the dinner, they might sit in the fireside to have a chat, or someone can read a poem or read a book to entertain everyone, or play music. But when the TV station, television change our life, people still can join together in the living room, but watch TV instead of talking to each other. But when the cable come, cable more individualized for the TV watching behavior. So everyone got his own TV set in the room. So that's we are no longer associated with the parents, especially for younger generation. But when the social media come, when the cable come, we lost our parent. But when the social media come, we lost our family, because we are no longer hang out with the family. We, connect with the lot of friends by internet, by different social media. So I think it's just totally changed the relationship between the parent and the children, and people to people as well. We can have a dinner with a friend, but everyone watch their own iPhone instead of talking to each other. So that's the media technology change our life behavior. And also, I think that for the younger generation, they got some serious challenge for self-identity. Because in the past, we identify ourselves with the family, with the societal relationship. But now the social relationship change. Everything is on virtual. So how you define yourself become very, very challenging to the younger generation. Also, how you define yourself is also very crucial to the younger generations. And also, so far, there's so many information around us. And you had to mail into the big amount of information. In one part, it's good to have a transparent information, but in the other part, you might lose in the, oceanic information, and you might lose, yourself. How can I absorb what information is good to me, what information is useful to me, and what information is genuine, what is flawed. So I think it's very difficult to tell, right or wrong. So aside from self-identity, it's also difficult to differentiate right or wrong, good or bad. Everything is the boundaries been diminished. So I think there's two challenges for our younger generation, but for all of generations, including ours and yours, we have to face the reality that economically now is a plutocracy. I mean, few mega tycoon might control, occupy the major or the wealth in the society. So it's be suffer for the younger generation to really make life, make a good wealth, and it's very, very difficulty so far. And social politically now is quite oligarchy. You can see many social movement turn against the political oligarchy, not only in some, we say, aristocracy country, but even in democratic country, like in the state, still, it's a sort of oligarchy happen in the social political environment. And also now we have a big challenge for the new technologies controlled by mega conglomerate or mega entrepreneurs, such as AI, biotech, and also internet, information technologies is all controlled by few entrepreneurs. So it's a very difficulty, not only for the younger generation, but for every generation, how to cope with the situation and how to, share those technology that benefit not only few, but benefit all. Instead of controlling everyone, we can share, those in innovation equally and transparently. I think it's both challenge to younger generation and to every one of us.
Thank you, Dr. He. I think what you have mentioned is really important because for how the world currently develop is actually really tough for young people as well, not only for the elder generation. So it seems like both generation really need to, like hold the hands together to move forward. Otherwise, if we don't do this together, both of the generations will suffer in different ways. So thank you for reminding us for that. And I really appreciate how you understand all the difficulties that young people face nowadays, and sometimes it's not really what we want, but the environment forces us to become that. But for young people, we need to be aware as well. We need to always reflect upon ourselves on, are we doing the right thing today? Are we sharing the right information, like what Dr. He has mentioned? So every of this, I think, is really important tips for us to moving forward. So thank you everyone for sharing the first question. And now we're going to move to the second one. So with the dialogue today, we are hoping to foster closer interactions and deeper understandings across generations. So we have specific question for each of you, and we will start with Maisha again, and then Timmy, Hawa, and Dr. He. So for Maisha, from a youth perspective, what do you most concerned about the future? And what is the most important aspect of your life? And what do we have to do to attract young people to work together with the other generations? Over to you, Maisha.
I would say the most concern right now that I would be the well-being of the people itself, since we've all gone through a lot, especially through a pandemic, and each country had their own follow-up problems after this. And it most definitely will take a toll on people and the youth. And the future generation, our jobs and health, it's all based on this. For example, for the youth or even younger generations, especially those who are schooling nowadays, day-to-day activities like talking to their neighbors and peers may be more tougher than back in the day because they were isolated at home and they're used to homeschooling. The only form of social interaction that they would have as growing up would be social media, or whenever they live stream something like that. It's very limited. So this could lead them to having social anxiety or any form of introvertedness. Being an introvert is completely fine, but at this point, it's developing in a rate where it can affect people's personalities and how they approach situations. So I think it's important that we all rebuild trust and confidence between people. And we should always remember to be empathetic towards each other as well. For example, in Sri Lanka, there's a lot of youth that are concerned about their futures as well, since our country it's gone through a lot after the pandemic. There was the corruption and the aftermath of that all. So even up to date, people can barely go outside. And I've had many friends and peers that just confide and they admit that their mental health is actually decreasing as well. So, and they talk about how they don't see a future and all of that. So I guess it's very important that we always remember that we've got each other. You might feel like you don't understand, like no one would understand you, but talking with others, even people who are older than you, will most definitely help. And I would say the most important aspect in my life would be my present and my future. So I would like to work towards being a better person myself and to the people around me as well, which is why I think reducing the intergenerational gap is very important, that we should always talk to each other and try to understand, because it's concerning on how the youth will move forward in a global perspective. So we always have to support each other and practice empathy and remember that we're all in this together. And to attract younger generations to work with older generations, I think we should find a middle ground where at least both parties are mildly interested in. For example, it could be very simple, like a workshop to make home brewed coffee. I remember back when quarantine started, there was a whole trend in making dalgona coffee at home, and a lot of people of all ages, they were posting about it on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, or even TikTok. Because by the end of the day, everyone's got their inner child, no matter how old they are. So for sure, there will be a middle ground. And we should always encourage multi-generational team working and respect each other's cultural values. And just like how everyone spoke about technology, I'll admit technology is advancing in a very fast pace. So maybe we could always use technology that's much easier to understand and use when we're in the workplace or even communicating with each other from different time zones, something that's very user-friendly towards each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Maisha. So I think you have raised some really important points that we may have neglected in our society. So like, how do we rebuild the confidence and trust between people? How do we practice empathy towards other people? Sometimes even to our family, our friends, we couldn't really apply that, right? So I think it's really important values that all of us need to pick up in order to interact with other generation. And Maisha also mentioned about the issues that the Sri Lankan youth are facing, which are really crucial for us to, be worried about and to pay attention to, because all these young people in the country itself may face multiple challenges that we are unable to imagine after what the country has been gone through. So thanks, Maisha, for sharing about that. And we're going to move to Timmy. So Timmy is between the generation of the youth and the elderly. So how do you see the importance of coexistence and collaboration across different generations, from your perspective, like between them? And what does each generation have to do to improve the confidence and trust toward each other, which can enhance the collaboration between generations?
Thank you. I think the most important aspect of coexistence and collaboration is understanding the different perspectives and building a relationship between everyone. We as Gen Y are kind of like the in-betweeners. We grew up playing in the playgrounds with limited, or should I say similar technology to our parents did, but also got accustomed to using technology at a very early age. Not as young as the youth, but long enough to understand how different generations, and we can be the bridge to facilitate the conversation between the two different generations to close this intergenerational gap. We all live in the same society, so it is vitally important that we can all work together. The elderly has a lot of experience that can be shared, but the question is, how can this be done in a way that is relatable to the youth of today? The perspectives from generations on society will be different, but if everyone is respectful towards each other, open-minded, and ready to learn, then we will have a solid platform for discussions. When we were younger, we would listen to the elders and do what we were told, but the youth are more curious, so they want to know the why behind the things they do. The elderly might get frustrated that the younger ones aren't listening to them, but the fact is, they have a different way of thinking compared to Gen Y. As long as they know the why, they can be convinced. On the other hand, it is for us in the middle to engage with the youth to help them understand why the elders think the way they do. Sometimes we all wonder why the elders are so set in their own ways and don't want to change. And the truth is that sometimes they are afraid to change because they don't understand the technology at all. It will take them time to help them understand, but once they know what we are talking about, they will catch on very quickly. In the volunteering world in Tzu, the same concept applies. The senior volunteers, the Sigu Sibo, have vast experiences from all the work they have done in the past. But how can these know-how be shared with the younger ones? How do we mentor the young ones to become leaders of tomorrow? If we had mutual understanding flowing both ways, then the gap will become smaller. It is essential that the elderly generation share their knowledge and experiences with the younger citizens, so they can be better prepared for what lies ahead. Information should not be shared from just talking and discussions. I believe a better way to pass this experience is via doing. Sigu Sibo need to trust their youth, providing them with a platform to practice, to learn, to grow, and to feel like they're making a difference, but also being there to help them along the way. A few years back, we started thinking about how we can get more youth and young working professionals to join our events. We have both activities during the week and weekends, but we were still struggling to attract these young new volunteers. Maybe we don't have the right activities at the right time. They are at school or work during the week, and the weekends they need to spend more time with family and have other activities. So we decided to do events during the weeknights after work, marketing our new volunteer events through different social media channels, which was a first for us as well. We actually got an influx of new volunteers. The event was cooking hot meals for people at the homeless shelter. We would cook the meals on a Wednesday night and serve them to the homeless the following night. And the reason for sharing this story is not only do we need to do meaningful events, it needs to be at the right time, that works, and promoted through channels that resonates with the younger generations. And they want to see the difference they are making in to those in need. We need the support and expertise from all generations with a respectful attitude, an open mind, and willingness to communicate. The youth, the in-betweeners, and the elderly generations can then achieve cross-generational collaboration.
Thank you, Timmy. I think indeed, like oftentimes when, like someone asked me to do something, first thing came to my mind, it's why. why do I need to do this? Why are we doing this? And what is the impact of this? So I think the younger generation nowadays would like to know more about the purpose. Like, are we doing something, we need justification on the things that people want us to do. So I think that is a great tips for those who want to interact with young people. So you can always tell them, why are we doing this, the objectives we want to achieve, etc. So I think that is really important. And also you mentioned about like, for example, in Suji, so many activities that are not suitable for young people anymore, which I somehow agree, because, like how we mentioned about technology, and the whole world's development moving so fast. Sometimes and how I also mentioned about how busy everyone's schedules is. So like, to cope with, the development, the schedule, some of the activities might not be attractive to young people anymore. But I think it's also important on how young people can actually create our own platform, create our own activities that is suitable for us. But indeed, we also need opportunities for us to voice out, to take lead, etc. So I think that is a really good, important point over here. Thank you for sharing. And next, we're going to invite Hawa. So we know that Hawa has a lot of experience working with young people across different countries and backgrounds. So from all your experience, your work, what are the most effective ways to increase youth participation in a particular group or cause? And what role does the UNDGC play in promoting intergenerational solidarity? To you, Hawa.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. For me, from a work perspective, or even I don't know, societal perspective, trust is really important. I think before you do anything for anyone, making people feel safe, comfortable, making them feel as if they can open up within an organization, within a club, at your job, that you are able to talk and even give your ideas without any reprisals, without feeling as if, oh my God, did I just say something that could get me in trouble? So I think building a level of trust, and I think it's across the generations, not only for young people to feel they're in a safe place. I mean, in the older generation also, I want to know that I'm interacting as an older person in a safe, transparent environment. And I think then at that point, I mean, what I try to do is make people or young people feel as if that their voice matters. Don't go into the room and feel as if everybody knows more than you do. I always say they really don't. So if you have an idea, if you have something to say, if you're doing work on the ground, say it, raise your hand. Don't wait for somebody to say, Ashley, Hawa, what do you have to say? I always say, the young people I'm working with, we're constantly breaking windows and kicking doors open, not in a violent way, but pushing the ideas, pushing the thoughts, making sure that the work and the voices of young people, are seen and heard. I think I like what you said, Ashley, because I actually had it in my talking points, and everything I'm saying is very personal, but my ideas have been generated by the young people I work with. So for me, that's a way, and that's the way I work in DGC, to make sure young people are involved. Even Ashley has written talking points for me. She's smiling there. But if I have something to do, I have an idea of what I want to say, but I always go back to the young people. Hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. From your perspective, what should the UN be doing? Or what are you doing in, Buddhist Chutsi? I mean, how is that working? How are you doing it in your organization? So it's important to make them feel, it's not even make them feel, but their voice should matter. And they should feel as if you're listening to them. But then my job is to make sure the UN is going beyond listening to them. Making sure that they have a role in that activity or in that UN initiative. I mean, so those are the type of things, I think for me, that's the role of DGC, providing that platform, making sure young people have that access to whatever is happening in the UN, but also making sure that they know that it's there. You know, we do like a bi-weekly youth news, which is self-subscription. And it's really to let people know, hey, this is what's happening in the UN. Nobody needs to say something or write a letter for you to be involved. Information is free. The UN is your world. You need to be proactive and make sure that you're tapping into those resources. I mean, one of the things we do in DGC is that we participate. I can barely talk right now. Ashley knows I'm at the Youth Assembly, which is here in New York. Friday, they were at the UN with DGC for International Youth Day. And then Saturday and Sunday, we're downtown in the financial district. And it's been such an awesome experience of seeing young people from all around the world. I mean, I need to make sure that I show up as the United Nations Department of Civil, of Global Communication, but as an older person, because I can't just say, hey, you know, young people are great, they're this, they're that, but I need to be there with them as an intergenerational person, part and parcel. So I've been screaming for the last 2 days and I can barely talk right now, but it's been absolutely satisfying talking with young people from all around the world and hearing their ideas in terms of what they are doing at the local level. And my job is to amplify that and to share that across the UN system and across my youth networks. So those are just some ideas and many more things I can say, but maybe we can get into that once we come into the question and answer. Thank you so much. Over.
Thank you, Hawa. And just want to let everyone know Hawa is a really great mentor. And, you know, like she's been accompanying so many young people across different organizations, different backgrounds throughout the whole process, engaging in at the UN. And also like for TIYA, we have been part of the civil society unique youth steering committee as well. So Hawa has been like guiding Steve and then me, and really hope to see more young people from TIYA will be able to, you know, join the whole process in the future. And what Hawa mentioned is really important too, about how we're creating a safe space for everyone. Because I found that in our organization as well, sometimes the adult volunteers are afraid to interact with youth volunteers because they think that they do not know what the young people are thinking. They're afraid that they will say something offensive to the young people. So I think for young people, we need to reflect, are we creating this kind of unsafe feeling to the adults to interact with us? So sometimes it's not that the adult doesn't want to interact with us, but instead we accidentally close the window, close the door, and we shut them out. So that is something that we need to think about it. So thank you, Hawa. Next, we're going to move to Dr. Her. So for Dr. Her, we have a question for you. So we know that CITI started to empowering youth population more than 30 years ago. So we have resulting in a great number of wonderful youth volunteers, which have substantially grown to adult volunteers. So however, we can still see a growing gap across generations in the volunteer community, which is dominated by the senior generation. So what are the possible reasons for this happening in CITI? And from someone who has been constantly interacting with the younger generations, how do you feel about the young people nowadays? Do you think that they are ready to inherit the world? How would you like to see the young people responding to the misunderstanding and conflicts between their generation and other generation?
Yeah, the reason that our youth group, at Shiqing, has been undergo some kind of diminution. Back to 1991, I was in the state in Southern California, and my wife Julia and I co-organized the youth group in United States. I think that's the first youth group in the whole Tzu community. At the time, we accompany with the young people. We don't dominate, we don't control, but gradually, as understand that in the last decade at least, that due to the Chinese patriarchal culture, so the older generation or senior generation more focus on control instead of empowerment, more on command instead of respect. So they expect that the younger generation should obey 听话 as a 才会乖 as a good boy or good girl. So it's based on the domination and the authority instead of respect, instead of empowerment, so that we can see the younger generation, is less likely join 慈济 at this moment, especially in the last 1 decade. So I think for my understanding, I got a son, Andrew. He's in state right now. He's going to New York, and Andrew probably actually also know him. And from my understanding of a younger generation in general, they are more innovative, and they are more self-esteem, and they are more free thinking. I think this is a very good, personality for a younger generation, have a free thinking, self-esteem, so they can be more innovative. Because in the past, our economic system is based on manufacturing. And in manufacturing, the key of manufacturing is a control and command. But in your generation or now generation is about economy of knowledge base, not manufacturing base. For the manufacturing base is command and control. For the knowledge-based economy, it must be collaboration and a partnership. So I think for the younger generation, had a personality with the innovation, self-esteem, and free thinking is good to be a partner, to share, your knowledge with the partners, and also share value. So there's no, single authority. It's a shared value. We have to respect each other, the differences, so that we can collaborate. So in concern of collaboration and co-partnership, we have to share our talent, our knowledge, and share our values so that we can become the really collaborative team to deal with the new era of new technologies, which I say AI, internet, and also biotech. So I think in the age of economy, knowledge-based economy, I think the younger generation will be more innovative, more adapt to the new era. And I think, for some extent, you will become a less hierarchy, more multi-centers organization. And I look forward that happen. I think next generation will live better than we do because it's a multi-center. It's more self-empowerment. It's shared value, the shared knowledges. So I think the technology now is allow everyone to share value and share information because the transparency has been, so pervasive in this. So I think we will be better than us. That's what I think.
Thank you, Dr. He. I just want to follow up with a further question. So what would you suggest the young people to do, to prepare themselves better? Although I know that you have mentioned that you think the younger generation would be better, but do you have any suggestion for them, for us?
I have a suggestion for that. You have to define your knowledge scope. You have to define yourself. What kind of knowledge you want to learn? So the structure of knowledge will be assist you to your further success or further development. And secondary is critical thinking, of course. You have to, be dialectic thinking to tell right or wrong, to tell which is good or which is bad for you or for the whole society. You have to be dialectic thinking. And thirdly, most importantly, is less emphasize in the educational system is compassion. Altruism and compassion is very important for the younger generation to associate with the senior generation, to associate with the others, and associate with the rest of the world. So I think the knowledge base, what kind of knowledge you want to learn, to be the foundation of knowledge, the structure of knowledge is crucial for you. And dialectic thinking, secondary, is very important for you to build autonomous in the thinking capability. And thirdly, You have to serve the world, serve the others. Compassionate altruism is so important for younger generation and for the year to come and for the year to learn.
Thank you so much, Dr. Her. I think those are really great suggestion for young people to keep in mind. And you have also mentioned about the older generation might have more focus on control than empowerment, which is kind of true, because I still remember when I first joined the organization at a very young age, like around 15. So all the older generation just expect us to be obedient. So that is quite a true environment that young people face. So I think that is also a good voice for the old people to hear about how young people actually need more trust, like how Maisha, Timmy, and Hawa all mentioned about trust, and also how we actually need mentor and guidance instead of control. And yeah, and I just want to remind our participants that you can leave your questions in the chat. And we have some comments. We can see Zhao from the Zoom. He said that technology brings us closer to those who are far away, but far away from those who are close, which is very true. So I think this is a great reminder for everyone as well. We need to use technology wisely. It should be a bridge for us to connect to other people, other generations. And he also mentioned that understanding the strength of each generations and working together as a team. Yes, I like the word team. So we need to have an intergenerational team like how we have today. We have all panelists, and I think we have a really good inputs from different perspectives. And now we're going to move into Q&A session. So we have captured a few questions from our registration form. Just want to let everyone know that we might not be able to answer all the questions, but we will try our best. So for now, let us go to the first question. So the first would be how to develop a workable plan to facilitate the intergenerational communication and dialogue at the same platform using the same language. Maybe we can revert this to Timmy.
Yes, so from my point of view, the how we can facilitate a plan, the best way is to understand what each other's views are and perspective on the world and the society that we all live in. So it's understanding what we are going through, what everyone's views are, and I don't believe it's a short-term fix. It's more of a long-term thing to kind of understand that. But we also need to build a relationship. We need to get dialogues going. The older generations needs to make an effort to talk to the youth of today, and the youth will need to make an effort as well to talk and to understand each other's perspectives. And to change things, it's a huge task. But it is about breaking those tasks into little bits, and you try to fix little bits one at a time before you get to your ultimate goal. So it's breaking that task down, because it might seem like a huge task, a huge plan, but break it down into little parts so you can work on one thing at a time. And over time, you will be able to get there with a good plan.
Thank you, Timmy, for the very practical suggestion. And also, when I look at the question, the participant asked about the issue of language. I think that is something that brings me issue as well, because when we talk about language, it's not about like Mandarin English, but the term that the generation understands. So for example, when I was communicating with one of our speaker earlier this morning for Mandarin session, and also with my colleague who is younger, like only 3 years old younger than me, they started to using some terms that I don't even heard about. And I'm like, oh my God, the world developed so fast that even I'm young, now considered young, I don't even understand what they're talking, so I think this may be harder for the elder generation. So we need to like always ensure we use the same language that, people around us understand, or we can always teach them to adapt to new language. And with that, we can then apply the practical suggestion that Timmy has provided. Then only we can build a very good consensus between generations to move forward with better plan. Yeah, thank you, Timmy, for that. And for the second question we have from the participant is that, do young people enjoy daily living? If not, what makes them feel unhappy most? So I guess Maisha will need to take this question.
I think young people do enjoy living. I guess it depends per person. I suppose you should always make use of what you have and always be grateful about it. But I would say be themselves. A lot of people have very high expectations towards themselves, and they expect to grow at a rate at what they see online or compare themselves to other people at the same time. This comparison is what makes you feel like, oh, I'm not there yet. Why are we the same age, but why are they at a better place and why am I here? I guess that's what makes people unhappy nowadays.
Thank you so much, Marsha. I think what you have mentioned resonated very well with what one of our attendee, Mike, has mentioned in the Zoom chat. So younger generations nowadays may be more result-oriented, and we actually experience a huge stress from peer pressure, and social media have made it worse. So like what Maisha have mentioned, sometimes we ask why our friends can get that great job, why are they getting married that early, something like that. So sometimes we will feel peer pressure, especially for this generation, which we always wanted to learn so many things. We wanted to become so great, so amazing, so unique in the society. So I think this is somehow create an environment for for the young people to always like feel down on themselves or somehow turn into something negative. So I think this is something that we need to revise and think about how can we maintain our our pureness, our purity within all this chaotic environment. And also Mike has mentioned about Dr. Her talk about critical thinking, which is really crucial. So it's really important for young people to adopt critical thinking mindset for us to survive well in the society. Thank you, Maisha, for that. And now let's move to the third question, which it's from a very interesting perspective. So we all know that current society, we have mandatory retirement for older adults. So there's one participant asking if we should eliminate mandatory retirement for older adults. And we would like to hear from Hawa, from your perspective on this.
I've been looking at that question and really, in a sense, laughing, but thinking about it from a personal perspective, because there are probably pros and cons. And I've been thinking, do I think from an individual and society kind of perspective, or do I think as an employer, of people? I'll take the example of myself. I'm close to mandatory retirement age at the UN, which is 60. And I've been grappling with myself, what do I want to do? How do I want to do? And UN used to have a mandatory retirement age. If you came in before 1980, I think 9, which is me, you have to retire at 60. If you started working after 89, you mandatory retired in at 62. And the UN is a member state organization. But throughout the years, I guess, we all realize, the experience of older people, institutional memory that's needed. So member states actually moved it that now the retirement age mandatory though is at 65. So even someone like me, I can either decide to do my mandatory next in 2024, or I have the option of working for 5 years. And I'm thinking, you know, it depends from what part you look at it, because of course, if I'm hiring people, it costs less to hire younger people with less experience. And if I look at it again, also from a young person's perspective, retiring people at a certain age means you're making space for other people to move up within an organization, and you're offering opportunities for younger people. But you know, also there are many older people who retire at different times and ways and may not have adequate resources to continue living. So it's a hard question, really, because I'm thinking about that myself. Maybe it's important to have some threshold, but some people are 70 and they're operating like they're 55. And you don't want to have also, you know, people pushed out of things that they love to do and that they can still do. Because a problem that organizations have, even the UN faces this, is that people have to leave and then a whole stack of experience and knowledge goes out the door with them, because people coming in don't have that practical and institutional experience. So I don't know if I have a yes or no, because I'm caught between a hard and a rock place, because I'm in that situation now. And where at least I have an option in my organization, I can stay up to 65, but I still will have to leave. I don't know. This is a very hard question. I need help, Timmy, Maisha, because I can't answer it, because I think it might be different in every aspect. But if you're operating as an employer, maybe you do have to have these strict guidelines, but maybe finding a way to have a balance. Because I know even the United Nations offers retirees to come back and to do something, because we don't want people to retire from their professional life and then they're isolated where they are. Ashley, you're smiling. What do you think?
Yeah, I can feel your dilemma, because this question is tough for me as well, because you know, all the older adults, they have served their life for that purpose. Like suddenly you take away from them how they're going to deal with the rest of their life. And actually I would like to address this question to Dr. He as well. Maybe he has some thoughts on this. Do you think mandatory retirement it's we supposed to do that way?
Under the UN's criteria, I had to retire because I'm 61 years old now. Maybe I don't look like 61 years to you, but I'm over 60. And I don't think that we should have a mandatory retirement, because it belongs to organization, not network. We are now no longer organizational men. We cannot have organization define us. We have our network, social network, knowledge network. As long as you maintain the network, I think you have also self-employed, not only employed by some organizations. I think it's a big change. In the past, in the 1960s, IBM or big company, they have a lab service in one company. Now we have a different pattern. For me, from the media person to the charity person, and then I'm more likely emphasize myself in the academic study and research. So I don't think that we should stick with one organization or have an organization to define us. So as long as you have a network, you have a knowledge network, you have a social network, you can share your talent and your knowledge experience to everyone. And I think we undergo some kind of new era. Self-employment become very, very likely for everyone to work in your lifetime. No retirement sometimes.
Thank you, Dr. He. And with that, I think it kind of like what CG is implementing right now. So we know that in CG, there's no retirement, right? Because for, especially those adults that have retired from their job, they can actually come to CG and be a happy volunteer forever. But how do we ensure, like the coexistence with the younger volunteer who have also entered CG and they also wanted to contribute, they also wanted to take lead on on something. But instead, for this older generation, they might seem like they just started their journey in Tzu. So how do we balance that?
That's I want to share. I want to tell is that for the senior generation, they had to give up wholesale reflection about how they can change their the way they be a part of the member or the organization. They have to less likely to be domination and ready to control and ready to make decision. I think they can share their experience, their talent, and their vision to the younger generation, and respect and empower younger generation to have a self-innovation instead of listen to you. So for a lifetime volunteer, it's not mean you are always in a control or command position. You can serve your lifetime, but not, command, all the time. So I think it's very important for Tzu Chi, for the senior volunteers, not to take lead, but to guide by, younger generation, to collaborate with the younger generation, and to serve. The spirit of serve still maintain, but without, in the leading position. I think that's a very important morality and very important spirit for the senior generations to really reflect and also follow that kind of path, so that they can rejuvenate the organization and make the younger generation take the lead.
Thank you, Dr. He. And we can also see some great suggestion from the chat as well. So Angela from Australia mentioned that we should not have mandatory retirement age, but maybe a recommended retirement age. I think that is will be helpful. And also Zhao mentioned that maybe they can do health and other related assessment for retirement instead of looking at the age. And this is valid as well, I think. And we can also see Chi Kai King mentioned that we need to build effective models of learning across the entire organization and across all organizations, so all youth can benefit equally instead of doing this casually and individually in small pockets and leaving a large number of young people isolated and struggling to find their own ways. And maybe we need to ask this question to the younger generation as well. So for Timmy and Maisha, what do you guys feel about mandatory retirement? Like, because we know that if the older generation, they retire, there will be opportunities for younger generation. But how do you really feel about this issue? Maybe we can start from Maisha.
Okay. Well, I think the whole concept of a mandatory retirement age it's quite unfair, because like Dr. and Ms. Hawa mentioned, they're very capable of working despite their age. It's quite literally a situation of age is just a number. By the end of the day, if you are capable of working and you are happy with the way you work, I think you can continue working as long as it does not harm you in your medical scenarios or anywhere else. And you can even share your experiences with the youth and help them go to the place where you are right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Maisha. Over to you, Timmy.
In regards to the mandatory retirement age, there's no such thing in New Zealand, so it's not a thing that I've really thought about in the past. But just hearing from all the panelists today, I believe there shouldn't be a retirement age limit. We do have our at 65 years old here, you can get like a retirement benefit, but that is not a mandatory thing. I think if they are capable of doing the job that they are currently in, then I believe they should keep doing it. Because on the other hand, if we make them retire at an age, but they still want to carry on, there's a lot of repercussions behind that as well, including mental health, not knowing what to do when they retire. And this could cause a lot of issues down the track as well. And like what Maisha was saying as well, the ability for them to pass on their knowledge and experiences to those to the younger ones, so they can gain those experience. I think that's very crucial as well. So I don't believe there should be one, and there isn't one in New Zealand. So it's good news for us.
Thank you, Timmy. And really thank you all for answering that. I think that is really interesting perspective. And from the chat, we can see someone also mentioned that another bigger issue is that the senior kept being in the same position for many years, especially high-ranking positions, and that is also hindering the younger generations from progressing, which is very true. So we need to it's hard to find a solution, but we need to always work hard, toward that goal of balancing between the progress for younger generation and also not forgetting, all the values and effort that the older generations have made. So with that, I would like to thank you all for the questions and inputs. And if the participant wish to discuss more questions with the panelists, maybe you can share, maybe the panelists can share their email addresses in the chat if you wish to, just to keep in touch with more questions. And after hearing all the amazing inputs, which I personally learned a lot, now we're going to invite our repertoire for the day to highlight some important points for us to remember and to move forward. So now let us welcome Lynette Brondale, a volunteer from the City Philippines, for the concluding remarks. Thank you, Lynette.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ashley, and thank you, everyone. We started this dialogue by identifying the gaps between generations, whether there are really gaps that need to be addressed. Mayesha pointed out that one reason is due to the differences in perceiving issues per generation. Each generation faced problems that may be unique to them. For example, mental health used to be a taboo discussion, but now the current generation sees this as an important topic in the aspect of well-being. Timmy pointed out that technological advancements also contributed to the increasing intergenerational gap. We now have a generation who are global citizens with multicultural influences. And because of this, compliance to traditions may no longer be as attractive for the younger generations. They've developed quite a lot of interests that include traveling and grew very much attached to technology. Miss Jarlow agrees about the impact of technology in this fast-moving world. From her personal family perspective, intergenerational interactions within families gave her the opportunity to experience belongingness. But this sense of belongingness is something that got lost in translation along with technology. So there's also one participant who shared about technology brings us closer to those who are far away, but also further away from those who are close. So Dr. Hurd pointed out that social media in particular has shifted the experience of life to be individualized. For the younger generation, they have grown to seek self-identity. Aside from self-identity, it has been challenging to identify right and wrong. Our society is controlled, according to him, by few entrepreneurs in a socio-political environment. And we have to practice sharing this experience of change caused by technology instead of trying to tolerate control. So it's really about holding each other's hands. So representing the youth, Mayesha is most concerned about the well-being of people in the post-COVID era. In Sri Lanka, she feels that this period seems heavier for the youth as they had to go through the impact of corruption at the same time, which entirely affected them as a country. So seeing the news while also glued to studying online, both their education and mental health are matters of priority concerns. So she also spoke about how the migration of young scholars for higher studies, while it benefits their country, their economy, it also leaves them a drain of young progressive minds that will serve their own country's needs. So to improve youth representation and participation, Mayesha feels that the present and the future is important to her. Mayesha is telling us that we need more interactions and find the middle ground. The more that all generations try to understand the weight of the issues of the current times, the better we can develop empathy in our efforts to provide solutions. So for Timmy, on the other hand, coexistence and collaborations will be possible if we acknowledge and make use of the strengths that each generation has. All generations, whether you identify from the baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Gen Zs, or Alpha, should be able to contribute something. But more important than anything is understanding. The elderly should be willing to share their wisdom, while the youth, even while knowing that the world has changed a lot, should be open to receiving guidance because, well, wisdom never gets old. Now for Timmy, the key is to discover the connection pathways to get through the youth and invite them to collaborate. For example, as volunteers, we should provide them the opportunities, let them take leadership roles, and along the way, let them feel supported. For Ms. Jarlo, trust is very important in every aspect. Talking based on experience, it matters to make the youth feel safe and to provide safe spaces to get their voices heard. And this applies across generations, not only for the youth and not only for the adults. We're also very thankful for her role in the UN and their initiatives for making sure that access and platforms are available. Transitioning to Chuchi's experience, Dr. Her gave really good insights about whether the youth of today are really ready to inherit the world, the future. But first, he provided us inputs on what we can change in order to invite the youth, and that is to empower them instead of practicing control over them. It should be collaboration instead of control. He also said that it is important to acknowledge that the youth of today are innovative, esteemed, and free thinking. These are good qualities to complement the older generations. He mentioned the generation of today as an economy of knowledge, so we need to rise up to the challenge of welcoming collaboration rather than control. And finally, the challenge for the youth is to define yourself. What knowledge would you like to learn? I also like how he emphasized that for the youth, we need to reflect on what kind of impact we should make in the world, and the best way is to develop compassion. Now, I guess it is time to reimagine a future without boundaries together, and may we all to continue building bridges. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette, for the really great conclusion in such a short time. Thanks for capturing all the very important points for us. And I really hope that everyone has learned a lot from the dialogue. And moving forward, we have a final session, which we are going to have to grab the opportunity to share with you all about the next steps from TIYA after fostering a great understanding between generations today. So let us welcome Sean Tan, the coordinator of TIYA, to share with us the upcoming opportunities. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Ashley, and all the speakers and participants for joining today's dialogue. We are going to have our first TIYA International Youth Association Conference in October. So all your suggestions, thoughts will be collected, and then we will put into our agenda in the conference, which we have the topics of reimagining our future together. So after the COVID-19, what is our action as a youth? So next, we are actually having the thoughts to have a gathering. And then in the gathering, we try to inspire everyone. And then the most important is to how we can put into actions. So in this conference, we're going to cover 3 topics, including environmental protection, sustainable diet, and quality education. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the conference, we are going to have panel discussions like today, workshop, and also you will set a goal, what youth are going to do after the discussions. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this will be one-day event held on October 22nd, Saturday, at the time zone of GMT +8, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So the physical conference will be held in Taiwan, which is Taipei, northern part of Taiwan, in a new building that we are now renovating, which the name is Planetarium. So if you are an international participants out of Taiwan, we are going to have online conference and also online workshop. So next, please. So this is how it looks like right now. It will be our first official opening event in this planetarium for these conferences. So welcome everyone to join us. We are going to announce this event at the end of September. We are going to invite everyone through sending email to you. So please welcome to join our conference. Thank you so much. The time is yours, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean, for the great input. And now I just would like to thank you everyone for attending the dialogue today. And I hope all of you have gained better understanding toward each generation and might have some new ideas on building cross-generation partnerships and collaboration in the community or the work that you do. So I believe that with mutual respect, love, and gratitude towards each other, all generations can coexist together and build an inclusive society for all. And before I close, I just want to check with the chat. So Chika King mentioned that we should also focus on directing manpower to new organizational developments. A very good suggestion as well. So I really hope I just want to let everyone know that the dialogue today is not a one-time conversation that just like one time. We need to have a follow-up action. So we need to, after all of the important points you learned today, we need to apply to our life, apply to our organization, and to see how we can move forward to really build an inclusive environment for all generations. So thank you all panelists again for today, and thank you all participants for joining us, and wish all of you have a great day, a great night, and looking forward for an effective dialogue like this today again in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.